the Tennessee rental agreement. In this video, we will tell you about the most noteworthy aspects of rental agreements in the state of Tennessee. What is a rental agreement? A rental agreement, or a lease, is a document that outlines the arrangement between two parties regarding a property rental. The one who's paying rent is called a tenant, while the owner of the property, who lets the other party use it under certain conditions, is called a landlord. The parties may also be called a lessor and lessee. Typically, a rental agreement lasts for 6 or 12 months, with rent being paid every month or every week. There is one federal disclosure that works for all lease agreements in the United States. This is called the lead disclosure, and it requires the landlord to tell the tenant about all known lead paint hazards. They should also provide the state-approved version of the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. However, this requirement applies to not all types of residential dwellings. Required disclosures. Apart from the above-mentioned disclosure, the landlord should also include in a lease agreement the information about the names and addresses of the persons authorized to manage the premises to be rented and its owners. One more disclosure the landlord in Tennessee is responsible for is the location of the account with a security deposit, which the tenant should be notified about at the time of signing the lease and submitting the security deposit. However, the landlord is not required to tell the number of such an account. Security deposits. In Tennessee, the maximum security deposit is completely up to the landlord. The landlord can use the deposit to pay unpaid rent or repair any property damages caused by the tenant after conducting an inspection for damages on the premise. The tenant should get an itemized statement specifying detriments by mail. The deposit should be returned by the landlord within 30 days after the termination of the tenancy and delivery of possession, or within 7 days after a new tenant takes possession of the premises. The state of Tennessee does not set any liability provisions for the landlord who fails to return the security deposit to the tenant. Landlord access. In the Tennessee codified laws, there is no set requirement for the landlord who aims at entering the premises to inspect them or make necessary repairs. However, a 24-hour notice is always recommended. The only requirement for the landlord is to send the tenant a 24-hour notice prior to entry, if they plan to show the premises to prospective tenants within the final 30 days of the termination of the rental agreement. Such a right of access should be provided in the lease. Termination of agreement. To terminate a month-to-month tenancy, at least a 1-month notice should be sent by either of the parties. To terminate a week-to-week tenancy, at least a 10-day notice is needed. Notices for non-payment and non-compliance. If the tenant fails to pay rent, at least a 14-day notice to pay or quit should be mailed by the landlord in Tennessee. If the tenant breaches the lease in a way that can be remedied by repair, replacement of a damaged item, or cleaning, at least a 14-day notice should be sent by the landlord. If the tenant breaches the lease in any other way, at least a 30-day notice to either remedy the breach or vacate should be sent to them by the landlord.